We're here with Sonia Robles to discuss higher education and teaching history. And Sonia, your degree is in Latin American history. And my first question is, and this is an entirely unrehearsed now because we did a little bit before, but I wanted to know why you picked history as your subject area.
Okay. Yes, I lived in my childhood. I spent in Mexico City, and so it's ancient city. Founded in 1325. So it's a pretty old city. And when I was a small child, my parents would take us to the pyramids and to different museums, and so. As when I was 4, when I was 5, I remember, climbing ancient ruins.
Cool.
And just sort of history. The way I always describe it is the history was in my face a lot. It was just very much just part of my everyday life. And so, so then when I went to college here in the United States, I saw that history. I didn't see that history was as much part of the daily life, and this was in Northern California. And so I just began to wonder, just why, right? And then I thought, well, this is an interesting, type of way to get at the past is by asking questions. So,
wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So you grew up in a place that was rich in history, and you were exposed to it as a child. And when did you move to the United States?
When I was 11.
11, okay. So actually, I don't know if even you know this. I think there's more pyramid structures in Central America than anywhere else in the world. Something like 50,000.
Yeah.
Most of them are in ruins, but I mean, it leaves Egypt in the dust.
Yes.
Okay. Now, your dissertation topic was what?
I studied radio, the creation of commercial radio in Mexico, and specifically radio stations in Mexico that transmitted to audiences here in the United States.
Cool. That's very interesting. I wonder if you can ask, this is a question I've always had in my mind since the 70s when I drove to Mexico.
Okay.
Every single Mexican station had this humongous echo in the voice.
Oh.
And they were doing things like advertising cemeteries.
Yes. Yes.
Or in hospitals.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Am I right?
Yes. So that was one side of border radio. So
Right.
so what I look at is the Mexican side of border radio. So so what was happening, and this is really interesting, is that there was about a handful of like 4 or 5 different U.S. Businessmen, doctors, people who just kind of were on the run from the FCC, the U.S. government, the American Medical Association, and they went to Mexico to establish these what were called border blasters. These high power stations that would transmit way north, right?
Really?
Into the United States. Yeah, there's an excellent book about it.
Okay.
And but while they did that, what I found is that Mexican entrepreneurs also established stations on the border, and their stations were lower powered, so they were more local. But instead of doing things like advertising for cemeteries, like you said, right, or certain things like goat gland surgeries, right, which is what one man did, in Del Rio, Texas. They were actually advertising to the Mexican communities in the U.S.
Okay.
So for example, a bakery in San Antonio, would advertise for their bakery, about more than 100 miles away in a Mexican radio station.
And people would come?
Well, they did it for several years. So
wow.
So I tell, the way I like to describe it is that I tell the Mexican side of border radio because essentially those stations lasted a lot longer than the border blasters, and they served this transnational function, right? They were innovative, for their time.
Okay.
This was the 1930s, the early 1940s, and so they were ahead of their time.
Okay.
They were innovative, and they created a border culture that was unique because it took into account Mexico, but it also took into account the U.S. Southwest.
Okay. And so the net result of this was a positive thing, you think?
I think so. I argue, because I think that it helped Mexico, kind of define its border with the United States. Today in today's world, the border is it has so many negative associations attached to it. It's seen as, as a, space of walls, right? Or most recently, right, as this horrible place, where children are being detained, right? As in what happened last summer. So, what I found was that the border actually helped the Mexican government, kind of outline its border with the United States. And it helped these Mexican entrepreneurs because essentially it gave them businesses, right? It helped them to be able to say, oh, okay, from here to here is Mexico, here to here is the United States, and so, let's make businesses right on the line, where we can cater to the Mexicans on the U.S. side.
That's really interesting. Wow. So. Well, that kind of derails some of the questions that I had in mind. But right now, you're teaching American history,
yes.
right? And this is a general survey course, I take it, for the most part. So
yes.
it would be intro American history, not a special topic.
Yes.
What would you tell an ornery student who's more or less, I don't want to say forced into it, I assume it's some sort of elective, but they're, maybe they're doing it for distribution requirement, and they're really not that interested. And so they have an ornery attitude about it. So they challenge you. Well, that's great and everything, and I've been here for a week now, but I haven't learned anything that's going to help me in my work, in my job.
Okay.
So what's your answer?
So the way how I begin class, right, at the beginning of the semester, is I tell them that in this class they're going to learn certain skills, right, and that I want them to learn certain skills that they can take to other classes, right. So I'm not so much worried about tests and about them actually being like parrots, and memorizing things and just kind of giving them back to me, so. I don't have multiple choice exams, for example, because I think that they're kind of worthless in that way,
Okay.
So students don't retain, a large amount of knowledge unless they like to. So what I do is I just expose them to different kinds of reading, to different types of essays, different types of material. And so if the student was saying, well, I haven't learned anything, I would say, well, we'll wait until the first exam, right? Because in the first exam, which would be an essay, right, an in-class essay, you're going to get to practice your critical thinking skills, right, and you're going to get to practice, especially how to make an argument, right, and how to formulate an argument. So I would say, it is my goal, right, that you would take that skill, right, because, which is something that you have to learn and you have to practice, right. You can't. You don't just, it's like any sort of, difficult thing. You don't just wake up one day and
right.
how to, how to make a really good argument. And so I would say, my hope is for you in the rest of your college career that you can use the skills in this class and then transfer them over to other ones.
Okay. And in their life skills in general, and in terms of getting a job and working through that, some of that's going to be involved, is going to be helpful to them.
Yes. I mean, I guess the way I see it is so U.S. history then is the portal, right? It's the avenue that you're going to get to practice these skills. Now, of course, my hope is that as you kind of cross through that avenue, you read things that interest you, right? Because I want to expose you to different kinds of material.
Well, that actually leads into my next and final question. Okay, so. This is an opportunity for them to practice their skills and everything like that. But there's probably some kind of lesson that you want them to take away. And maybe, and this is a kind of maybe an odd way of putting it, but let's imagine that there's an alien from another planet that comes down and, needs to gather some information very, very quickly. And finds out that you teach American history. Oh, what's that? Okay. You can't summarize the whole thing in terms of events, but you could probably summarize it in terms of some sort of big lesson or some big point of it. So do you think that there's a kind of point that students can take away from the study of American history in general, some big message, some big life lesson that can help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and this is me personally, but then also, as a teacher, I think history, especially U.S. history, leads you to understanding yourself better, right, and understanding, your place in society, right? So how you do that is through asking questions, right? And so I think,
Okay.
What I find most useful of history is that it forces you to ask critical questions about the past, and so.
Oh.
The past, and then obviously how the past informed the future. So,
Would you go with the idea that it helps make better citizens?
I think asking the right kinds of questions, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's how you get at them, right? How you get at the past. That I think that really makes the difference. So
Santayana's famous phrase: "Those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it." I've said it wrong, but that's the basic idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that gets thrown out a lot, right? That we're just going to repeat our mistakes and things like that. But
Yeah.
I guess for me, I think more, there's so many ways to get at the past, and so many questions that we could be asking about what really happened, that I think that's the fun part. That's the creative, exciting part to me, is that we can, go to the past, through different avenues, I guess, and
Okay.
different research, different tools, different methods.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
great. All right. Well, let's say goodbye to our viewers. Bye.
Bye.